All right, back at it today with the E36. What I'm gonna do today is something that's new to me, and it's dealing with this clear coat. Obviously, it's pretty beat up, but one of the ways to test if the issue is the base coat or the clear coat is by spraying water on it. So what I'm gonna do here is give you an example, right? To see essentially what the car would look like if clear coat was on top of it. All right, so looking here, right? You see how the car looks, right? In essence, this is what it would look like if clear coat was on top of it. You can see that to the extent that I could get a coat of clear over here, it would be a big improvement from what it has going on now. Now, in terms of how to do this, it's a straightforward process, at least from what I've seen on YouTube. And as we know, things always turn out perfectly like how you see on YouTube, right? So here we go. First things first is I'm going to have to sand this down, wet sand it down. That's part of the reason I have the bottle already. Wet sand it down to get the surface to mate so that it could kind of blend in with the old clear coat with the new one. So what I'll be doing is I have two different grit here. I have 1,000 grit as well as a 1,200 grit. You notice that both of these are for wet and dry sanding. Wet and dry sanding. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna proceed by going through it. I'm gonna start with the easier areas. So I'm gonna start with flat areas like the trunk, right? Then I'll proceed to more complicated areas like here, the rear quarter panels. The roof will be last. But here we go. Let's see what happens. Each set of sandpaper, it comes out in sheets of 5. Now, I'm not gonna be using this entire piece, certainly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by, I think, cutting it up maybe 6 different pieces. All right, I've got my 6 pieces of sandpaper. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it one at a time. What I'm gonna do here, right, is focus on the edge, just kind of smooth this out. There's a kind of a lip to it. Something like this, right, is clearly down beyond the clear coat. You can see the metal below it. Not much I could do there, but what I can do is still cover it with some amount of clear coat so it has some protection against corrosion. So what I'm gonna do is sand each of these parts down. Before you begin this process, you clean off the car thoroughly. Now this car has been washed. Might not look like it, but it has been washed. Washed thoroughly and dried off with microfiber cloths. Now you notice that some of the base coat seems to be coming off. That's to be expected to a certain extent because there is an oxidized layer on top of it. Frankly, we're gonna see, right? I don't know from actual experience, but we're gonna both find out here. When you're looking for like smooth edges, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep on moving through and essentially going through the different areas and prepping the car so that I just get all of this out the way before proceeding with the next phase, which would be putting on the clear or base coat in some instances. You know, they say experience always comes the moment after you needed it. So what I found is when wet sanding, you've got to keep this thing soaking. I mean, like, you're basically constantly spraying. The reason why it was getting down here is frankly because it wasn't wet enough. That's why these issues are there. The good thing is that it's primarily on this flat panel, right? And you know, you live, you learn. However, though, I'm finding that bigger areas that I've done it, as I'm here just like literally just spraying the whole time, I have it with my left hand spraying and sanding at the same time, it doesn't have those issues. It's only getting the clear. So can't call it a pro tip because I am not a pro But experience tip, you've gotta keep on spraying the entire time. In fact, what I've done is I've taken off the nozzle that made it come out like more of a spray, and it's just like gushing out at this point. So now it's coming out like this. And I'm spraying the whole time, just the whole time while sanding. And it has better results. I'm not damaging the base layer as much. Actually, I'm not damaging the base layer at all. So keep on spraying and you'll have better results. Now, important note, and this is critical here. If you're doing this, don't go sanding down every part of the car, right? What you're looking for, again, are places where the clear, right? There's a distinction between where there's no more clear and there's clear. If we're talking about something like this roof, don't go to town sanding this thing, right? There's no clear. So there's nothing that you're trying to really mate to. Make sure this area is clean and prepare it for paint, right? Or prepare it for the clear. But you know, don't necessarily go to town with it. As opposed to something like here. Notice, right? Here, there's no more clear there. Here, there's a clear and distinct place where there's a difference, right? No clear, clear. And what you're doing is taking down the extra. You could hear it, right? So that the mating surface could be similar and you could blend it in. Here, there's none of that going on. You just want to keep it clean, and it is frankly not that much to prep. This is how you want it to look, right? You can see you notice there's no real edge to it, right? It kind of blends into where the clear was, blends into the paint itself. There's some areas it needs a little bit more work, like here, right? You can see the clear. You don't want to have this edge, right? Because ultimately this will end up peeling off anyway. This is, I would say, a perfect area right here. There's no edge. It gives it a nice mating surface between where the clear isn't and where the clear is for you to repaint it. Similarly here, that's what you're looking for. Now here, you can see on the lower part here, this is a part I didn't use enough water, so you know, you gotta deal with those consequences. But ultimately, you know, this is the type of finish that you're looking for. Now, once you've done what you've needed to do with all of the surfaces, you clean the car again. So clean off the car properly and then wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol. So of course the biggest thing is prepping, right? Now, since I already have everything set up, you know, I've had the car cleaned down, I decided that I would repaint the black trim. And I have just a thing for that. So you see I have everything here covered except for the areas that I want exposed, you know, things like here. It might look dirty, but it's just that it's weathered at this point. So as you can see, got it all covered. You want to cover as much as possible. Here, I'm gonna do the clear up to this point, the entire roof, the entire trunk. Down here I have it taped off. And the same thing follows over here. I think this is a good cutoff point. This part will be cleared. And down here, I'll just have it the black trim. So I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna keep on prepping, cleaning this thing down, and see how it goes. All right, so it's day 2. Today I'm gonna start painting. So what I have is I have the cars covered up, and what I'm gonna do is start with the black trim. I don't expect the spray would necessarily come all the way out here, but frankly, you never know, and I don't plan on finding out. These items are the main things you need. You'll want to have a respirator that's made for paint, and some goggles too. The one that I like to use is this SEM Trim Black, right? It makes it consistent with how the color looked. If it's helpful, it's 39143. I find that this is the closest thing to how the trim already looked. I love these things. This is a can gun, so when the top comes off, it just hooks right on, and it just gives a very consistent spray. It has different levels, so you can modulate it depending on if you're doing a lighter coat earlier on or a wet coat later on, which would be a heavier one. Now, before you start painting, besides shaking the can, you'll want to warm it up. That allows for the spray to be more consistent. So what I'm going to do is take a bucket of water, warm water, place the can in there for maybe 10 minutes before I start spraying. All right, after it's out of its hot water bath, make sure you shake it up for a full minute at least. Once you have your can warmed up, it's shaken and everything, you want to make sure you take a test spray so you can see that things are flowing out properly and smoothly. You want to do this beforehand before you start putting it to your car or whatever your painting application is. Quick note on technique, make sure you always start moving your hand before you actually start spraying. Now start with a light coat at first. You're building up in layers, so the first coat doesn't have to be perfect. This is after the first coat. What I'm going to do is show you as I go through the different coats. I'm going to focus in specifically on the rear bumper. I think this will give you a consistent thing to look at. This is after coat 2. Looking closely here, you see that it's coming in a little bit more. It's still not perfect yet, but it's getting where it needs to be. Moving to coat 3, you could tell, I hope you can tell at least from the camera, that it's coming together really nicely. Even very close up, you can see that the shade is very consistent, very smooth, and it's coming along really nicely at this point. By coat 4, this is my last one. I put a heavier spray on this one. I should note that in between each coat, I'm giving it approximately 10 minutes. Once you finish with your coats of paint, you'll want to take off the tape while it's still wet. Now, the big thing here in taking off the tape is to make sure that you pull the tape away from the freshly painted surface. This way that you don't take off any of the fresh new paint. So here's a walk around of the car. This is the very next day. So I've taken off all of the tape, and this is what it looks like a day later. For the most part, things certainly have dried by now. It's not so dry that you could go running it through a car wash, but this gives you a good sense of what it's pretty much going to look at like. I want to show you really close up here. You see it's very integrated into the surface. And this is why you want to make sure you cover the cars or cover anything that's important to you. So this is a week later, looking closer at it here. It's come out very nice. So I'm gonna have to take a pause from further painting until the clear comes in. This will be a 2-part video, but that's where we're gonna stop it here. Until next time, guys, thanks for checking it out.